Welcome to another episode of Move, Talk, Thrive. Today we are talking all about time management, boundaries, and how to use our non-client facing time. A very important topic, particularly for those new grads out there and people working up into leadership positions. So let's get stuck in.
I'm Lizzie Dawson, Australian exercise physiologist.
I'm Emily Mackey, Australian speech pathologist.
And this is the Move, Talk, Thrive podcast.
Hello, everyone.
I love this topic. I'm so excited.
Liz is a bit of an expert / whiz on time planning and goal setting and time management. So
I like to be planned. I like to be planned. I like to be proactive instead of reactive. And that's what it's about, really, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And I think, when you step into, I don't know if you were the same, when you transitioned out of being like a full-time practitioner into more like business owner world, and you had all this spare time and you're like, oh, what am I going to do with all this time? And you think you've got all this time and it just goes really quickly and you haven't achieved anything. And I see this happening with my team that move up into more management or leadership positions or like admin positions that are quite reactive. And it's something that has made a huge difference in my life, having some, I guess, skills around it and being more strategic with my time.
Yeah, you have to be, don't you? I think that is the biggest myth. The more you think you have time, the less you get done. Totally. I feel like ever since I've had children, and I've always had that sort of notion in my head that I only have very limited time to work because I'm sort of got them. I've been so productive.
You're amazing. Hey.
So productive. And it's just, I think it comes back to that I have a boundary and some guidelines around my time. But yes, I experienced the same thing that you were saying. I was so used to my diary being governed by clients and client blocks that when I then had no clients or like my non-face-to-face time, you just fall into that trap, which that's what we're going to talk about today. Because I feel like, again, same as you said, a lot of people get stuck in this trap and then it's sort of just running around. So let's break it down of how we be super productive, super intentional with achieving our goals.
Because I think it goes both ways, doesn't it? You've got you've got too much time or like all this white space and not being planned. So you kind of take ages, and I don't know what the actual data is, but I know it's there. But when you get interrupted and it takes you 20 minutes to get into something. But so you've got that trap of having too much time. But then when you're a clinician and just say you have like admin time or only 45 minutes or an hour cancellation time or just a small gap of time, if you're not planned and mapped out for the time that it takes you to get into whatever the task is or organize like what you actually have, like what's on your list of things to do, it's pretty tricky to make use of that time.
Yeah, absolutely. And then people wonder why they haven't got things done because they've been using all of their spare time to plan instead of planning what to do in the spare time.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, what's worked really well for me is setting time out to map out the next 3 months. Like I do that every quarter without fail. I have not done it for about 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every quarter.
That's what we learned when we first came into business and we were coaching together is every quarter you do a 90-day plan and you map out your goals, like your professional goals. But then you've now taken it, and I'm not as good at this. I need to get better, but you've taken it now into a high level into your personal life as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're probably more in baby land. You still like have one foot in the door. Whereas I'm out. My kids are like full kindy 5 days a week in school. So it's a little bit different. I feel like I'm re-emerging. But yeah, I'm pretty goal oriented and planned in it. And you know what I think it probably is I'm quite anxious, as I feel like we've talked about throughout all of the podcast is my anxiety levels, but I know myself really well. And so I know what I need to not feel overwhelmed and to take steps in the right direction. And one of my affirmations is I take steps every single day.
You move the needle forward. Yep.
Yeah.
Do things. Yeah. So do you, how far in advance do you map out goals?
So I do 5 year and 1 year. 5 years a bit like, you know, what's my dream life? You know, like dreamland, which I love doing. And then 1 year is like, right, what do I need to do? What do I need to do in the next 12 months to
get to where I want to be?
There? Yeah. I think, yeah, you go.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that takes a lot of skill to be able to do that. Like you said, you've developed those skills and you've done it for a long time now, because a lot of the time we can think, okay, how do I even think about what I want in 5 years? I don't even know what I want to order for dinner, like what I'm cooking for dinner tonight.
Yeah.
How did you like get there?
Well, I think I'm a bit of a dreamer. Like I am a dreamer. And Pete and I have always, you know, we've always, like, we used to go looking at houses and we would be talking about, okay, we're going to get this sort of house at this time, and we're going to, you know, get this car, or, you know, or go traveling, or we've always kind of talked like that. We're both goal oriented though. So, you know, if you look at my exercise history, I've done marathon, Ironman, a bunch of half Ironmans, Olympic distance triathlons, half marathons. You can't actually do that without having that goal and then going, okay, what do I need to do each week to get there? What sessions do I need to do within the week? And then how do I progress that each week? And then you've got all your habits underneath that. So what diet do I need to have? What preventative healthcare do I need to have in place? What strength exercises do I need to do? How much sleep? You know, I can't do it if I'm not having sleep. So I feel like I'm just geared that way in a way from that.
That's a really good way to start the habit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really good.
That's what I love about exercise, because I think that it, particularly my experience, is that it set me up for setting up really good habits. And when I look at running, like I'm training for a half marathon now, and I can't have late nights. I need to have balance in my life. I need to eat really well. I need to drink enough water. Like all those habits that I think are quite easy to not prioritize become a necessity, because I won't get through the training if I don't do those. And I really like that about having I guess, an exercise goal, because it kind of transforms your whole life in a way.
I experienced that myself last year when I had the goal to do the 10Ks.
Yeah.
And I, you know, was very committed to training, because you have a goal in mind and you have an endpoint in mind. And if you don't train, you won't be able to achieve the goal, which was a deadline.
Yeah.
So I can actually understand. So whatever that would be, I feel like there's lots of things, like if you're learning a new skill, right? That would be like, and you have a deadline or a competition on yourself, that's very motivating and a good way to get into a good habit if you're not doing any sort of things like this now at the moment in terms of goal planning. Might be a little step to make it easier to do, some like use exercise or something like that if you're struggling to set like 5-year professional goals or personal goals for yourself.
Yeah, look at all the steps it takes to map out something like that. And if you choose something that's a little bit scary, so that you really have to map it out and you really have to make the changes, and you have to enlist a coach or, you know, your team of people that you might get, or you might find an online program, or, you know, whatever it is, you might get advice if you don't know how to set yourself up for running, or like, that's just an example, right?
And so I think like with our 12-month goals, because I will often set 12-month goals, I find that I like a lot easier in terms of smaller scale. It's exactly the same process, right? We sort of just go, this is where I want to be in 12 months. I find visualization helps.
Yes.
So I will visually see in my mind, you know, what I'm seeing for my life, what I'm seeing for the business, what I'm seeing for different areas of my life. And then it helps make it more real as well. Like not just a sort of can sometimes feel a bit wish-washy.
Yeah. It's a really good thing to do. And there's actually research on like visualization and how our body responds physiologically to what we're visualizing. It actually goes through the processes, and there's that whole thing of like feeling it and see it to believe it.
Yeah, and that gives you motivation, right? Like, I mean, but that's the same with Olympians. They always visualize what they're doing, and top performing athletes and even speakers before they get on stage. And I read in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which of course we had to bring that up, that he talks about visualization.
Yeah.
But the reason he says to visualize is because then you've actually walked through it once in your mind or twice in your mind, or how many times you visualize. But then when you actually go to do it, it's so familiar to you. So you don't get as nervous, you don't get as anxious, because you've already done it before in your mind. And so in that way, then you can actually help visualize your response to things, and how if you're trying to change a behavior or how you respond to a situation, you can change it in the visualization, so that when you actually do it, you're like, I've been here before. I can control my response. I can control my emotions or my thoughts or whatever it is that you're working on.
Yeah, totally.
And then
I do visualization every day.
Yeah. So that's a really healthy habit.
Yeah. And then I also do affirmations. And one of my tricks with affirmations, it might be a little bit weird, but I pretend I'm like 12 months in the future or 5 years in the future or whatever I'm visualizing. And I pretend I'm being interviewed on a podcast, and I say it in past tense. So I just took steps every single day. I just came back to the stats and let that drive me and drive my motivation. I looked after myself first so I could show up with energy. And it's actually really helpful.
Well, that is essentially making your language productive and helpful and healthy for you. And I think that is the exact opposite of what we often tend to do. And what our downfall is we run around going, I don't have enough time. I am stuck on this, I'm stuck on that. But actually, by doing that affirmation and even just choosing how you're speaking, that is what changes. That's what helps change your mindset. And obviously is really healthy, because we need to watch our language. Our language is powerful. So if we continue going around saying, I don't have enough time, how many times a week do we say that? How many times a week do we say, I'm too busy for that? That's really not the right thing that we should be saying. So the affirmations are good. But the right thing we should be saying is, I choose how to spend my time. Or like you're saying in your past tense, like, I chose how to spend my time and I used my time to do this.
Yeah.
And I think that goes into our point, which is time is not our master. Time is not my master. I am a master of my time, and I rule time. I will use my time intentionally. That's sort of those affirmations for the moment. And that's what I often will say to myself and say to others around me. Time is not my master.
Yeah, so, I've got time.
Yeah. Yep. So that is very, I think, not what's the word? It's not what most people say.
No, yeah.
It's not what most people say, but is a key to success.
It's a habit though.
Your time. Yes. And this is what time management is all about, and setting boundaries and being intentional with where we go. And I feel like I have gotten way more intentional since I've had kids, because I have to be. If I'm not, I just do not get anything done that I actually need to get done. And I've had very limited time with children. And sometimes you can't control like what time they're going to wake up, say if you're working in the morning. So you just have to be very switched on and intentional.
Yeah. I feel like my kids were such a blessing in balance to me. It was when I had kids that I had something bigger and more important to be productive for. I was like, right, I've got to get through this stuff. I've got to get and do it so that I can have my day off tomorrow with Flynn or Marley.
Exactly. Yes. It gives you that balance, like you said.
Yeah.
I feel like if we are running around saying, I don't have time, when we're saying that, we're abdicating responsibility. Yeah. So we're saying that time is in control of me. Time, I'm a victim here to time. And sometimes we can also get stuck in the glorification of busy.
Yeah.
So my friend once taught me to say my schedule is full,
Full.
not busy, because we're intentionally using our time. When we say that we're really busy, we can sort of go into that victim mentality again, like I'm a victim to time. Whereas a lot of the things we're doing with our time is because we've chosen to do those things. And we do choose to spend our time how we do. So we need to take responsibility for it. So saying our schedule is full is a bit of a healthier way to say I've like been busy.
Yeah, absolutely. I find myself slipping into that so much. And yeah, I try to reframe it with full.
Yeah, because it's a much better way to use our language.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the main thing. We don't want to be a victim to time. So we'd say that like planning and goal setting is necessary on every level of your, like no matter where you're at in your career, right? But it is also really, really important for when you're management, like in management or leadership, or you're wanting to advance your career. So like professionally, obviously advancement, but also personal advancement. So like we talked about, when you have kids, when you get married, when you move out of home, that's all like advancement in your career, in your
or even just lifestyle
life.
like we were saying, you did your 10K, I've done my running things.
Yeah.
Like even just that, like I think, who do you want to be, coming into that, who do you want to be and what does that person do and what do you need to do to get there?
Yeah, the B times do equals have. I think we reference that in our previous
I think
season.
so. I say have equals B plus 2.
Oh yeah, sorry, I probably got it wrong.
You do it different to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's powerful.
And the do is the time management, right?
Yeah.
So when we're talking about what we're going to do when a client cancels, so then we'll bring it specifically to what we do in our non-face-to-face time. So everyone should, in their diary as an allied health professional, have non-face-to-face time. It shouldn't just be completely full of clients. Depending on your workplace and your clientele that you see, everyone's non-face-to-face time will vary. But
if you're working, I was just going to say, if you're working for yourself, you should make time in your schedule for that.
So it's not white space. It's just time to do all the things that aren't like you should. Well, if you're a business owner, you would sort of have business time and then maybe like clinical time and then white space as well. So it's all just non-face-to-face hours. But at Speak About, my girls get a minimum of 5 hours per week. If that's if you're a very experienced clinician. If you're a new grad, you get way more than that. Of non-face-to-face time, and that's for paperwork and admin. What do your girls get, Lizzie?
Yeah, 5 hours, and then leadership gets more.
Yeah, leadership gets more. So again, as you grow in responsibility, you need to know how to use your time because you get more time. So we obviously talked about 5 years and 12 years, like on a micro scale. How often are you planning? Like daily?
Well, it's all mapped out for me. So every 90 days, I'm going away next week for 2 or 3 days, and I'll review my goals. At this time of year, I'll do the next 12 months. And then I'll go, okay, what do I need to do in the next 90 days to be on my path to that 12-month plan? And then I basically write down the goal. So it might be the podcast. And then I'll write down all the things I need to do to achieve that goal. And then how I know it's done. So I know how it's done.
What a good result is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What does a good result look like? Yeah.
And then I put it into Asana, which is a task management application or app. And all of those do things, all the things that need to be done for it, I will assign in different. So I've got my Google Calendar. So I've got my diaries, and I'll kind of block. So I might have goal time on a Monday morning. I might have clinic mentoring course curriculum. Like I'll have different things in there, financials, all the stuff that I've got to get in there. Then I will for every do thing, I assign that to a date. So it's got a due date. So then I just go into Asana and I go, okay, well, what's on this week? And I just check the previous couple of weeks to see if I've missed anything. And then I've got it all. So it's all kind of mapped out, and I'll just look at it each week, really.
Yeah. And because what that does is it takes the mental load off, right? You've got so many other things happening and so many things pop up through each quarter that you can't plan for, or even if it's family life or kids, the planning helps you reduce your mental load so that you then can actually focus on the task and not have to spend all of your mental load in planning. And it gives you space then to spend more time with the kids, or give that mental energy to your family or whatever it is, your team that needs it at that time.
Yeah, totally. And you can look at, like I've just had both my kids' birthdays. So I know that's a really busy time. So I look around, which I didn't do this time because I did launch in there, which was silly. But, it's looking at what's going on personally, and then, making sure that you don't have too much in and around that time. And yeah, it's finding the flow between your personal and your professional, and then just prioritizing. And then if I get into it, because things pop up, like you say, all the time, lots of things will pop up. And so in my planning, I try and keep it really simple and try and have 3 goals only, so that it's not like totally full. I used to have it really, really full. And so I was just going a million miles an hour all the time. So I'm working on that. But then if I'm feeling overwhelmed, like if lots of things have popped up, I journal every day. So I'll just journal all the things that I've got to do. And I'll then go, okay, look at my day and what I've got listed on my day, and go, all right, well, I'm going to do, these are the 3 most important tasks, and I'll do those. And I try to do the thing that I don't want to do the most, that I keep putting off. I try and do that first, so that it's like done, and I don't, and I get a big sense of achievement from that as well. So I'll try and do the thing I don't want to do first, so that that's done. And then I'll choose a couple of things, but I've got a whole list. So if I get through that, then I can go through the next thing on the list, basically. And that really helps with overwhelm.
Yeah. And I time block it too. So I know that I've got 60 minutes or 2 hours to do this task, which I really hate. So I know in 2 hours I'll have it done. Yes. I'm exactly the same way. I will always start every work day with the task that I find the hardest or most mentally draining, or the task that I don't really want to do, because then it just sets me up for the rest of the day. And I don't sit there for the whole day going, oh, I've got to do this thing. Oh, I've got to do this thing. And I think I'm a morning person. You're the same. Mm-hmm. We're most productive in the morning. So we know our energy levels. So we don't put tasks that are really hard or that we're going to easily procrastinate on in the afternoon.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's another really good point, is knowing when you are at your most potent, like at what periods of the day. Like I know I'm really good from 6 till about 11, and then 11 till 1, I'm shocking. And then I come good around 2 and peak around 4 again. And then at 5, I'm like gone. And nighttime, do not even ask me to do anything. I just sit on the couch.
And so that's like really applicable if you are given admin time or non-face-to-face time in your workplace. It's when are you going to use that time to be the most beneficial for you? So some of our girls in our clinic, they have all of their admin time in the morning and they break it up over 4 or 5 days. Some girls do a big chunk on a Friday. Some girls space it out through the week, like mornings and afternoons. It really depends on you and your peak performance, like Lizzie was saying. And so because we want to use that non-face-to-face time to be super productive, you want to try and make it as easy as possible for yourself. Not be fighting yourself in that time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think also some people like love organizing and adminning, and other people are going to love being with clients and doing client facing things
with people.
Yeah, with people. I would hazard a guess that most health professionals prefer the people side of it, but you're going to have both. So even just thinking about, okay, what do I get energy from, or what do I prefer to do? And then putting the things that you find more expensive from an energy perspective. So things that are harder for you in the time when you are most productive, and the things that you find easier in the times where you're not as productive because it's easier for you, if that makes sense.
That's exactly what I do. Yeah. And I think you said this before, but say on a daily basis, or even if you've got like a chunk of time, you would think about what are your 3 most important things. So from that list, or when you're in your energy, and then you would choose the thing that's going to give you the most momentum or give you the most impact to move forward. And it's the phrase, move the needle forward. So it's often, move the needle forward is said in a lot of business circles. If you're not in a business circle, you might not have heard it, but basically move the needle forward was a phrase that came in the 1980s, and it was based around key performance indicators, or KPIs, back then. But it's basically been adopted into business because it refers to how do you make a substantial difference or make a positive change in your life or in your tasks or your work. So it's literally what is going to move the needle forward. It could be a very small action or it could be a very big action, but how are you going to push yourself forward? And that's what you were saying, Lizzie, with your affirmations. Is how are you taking one step each day to achieve your goal?
Yeah, I think what I see is when I say to people, what are your 5-year goals or what are your 12-month goals? People are like, oh, I don't know.
I know it's very overwhelming for people at the start.
Overwhelmed. Yeah. They get really,
particularly out of uni, because your goal has been to finish uni. You don't have other goals after that.
Yeah, totally. And I find it really is, for the next kind of 5 to 10 years, it's like, am I supposed to be thinking about this? I'm thinking about my client goals or whatever. So I think that it can be really overwhelming, but I feel like when you go that step further and go, okay, well, just, think dreamland, like what would you love your life to look like? And then choose one goal. So it might be a half marathon or a 10K. And then you go, what are all the things I need to do? And then you just pick one thing to do each day or each week, or what habit you need to set up. I just feel like the exercise goal is such a great.
It's very concrete.
Yeah.
Very
well,
concrete.
And the other thing about it is that quite often, like you and I have both done with our exercise, is you're choosing something that's a little bit scary. And if you don't do the things, you're not going to be able to do the event. And it's got such a strict deadline. So can you try and apply that to, and that I feel like I really apply that to my work goals. I'm like, right, I said I was going to launch a podcast with Em in whatever time. We were pretty good with ourselves in being flexible. And I think that's also another important.
Yeah, you have your planning, but flexibility is also something. Yes.
Yeah, being kind to yourself and going, okay, is it gonna, if I'm 3 months behind, is that, is that gonna be okay? Or, being able to determine what the most important thing to do in the situation, if you're burnt out, if you're sick, being able to, because I can get really hell bent on goals. But even from an exercise perspective, it's the same thing. If you're sick and you're freaking out about this event and you train through being sick, you're not going to get better.
No,
thing, right? So
it's adjusting expectations on your goal and being okay to be flexible and be okay with unexpected circumstances, or being okay with change.
And giving yourself enough time. It's like you're not going to choose to do a marathon in 3 weeks' time. You might go like, I want to do New York Marathon next year. So I'm doing half marathons this year, and then I'll creep up to the trail running series, and then I'll, and so it's giving yourself enough time so that you can be flexible with yourself and kind with yourself and make time for unexpected things in work or health or whatever. But I think if you can place that same sort of deadline and commitment to whether it's a work goal or this is what I do with my work goals, but the same sort of commitment and deadline to your goal as you would like a fitness event, and then map it out the same way, and give yourself that flexibility, but just tick one thing off at a time.
Yeah, it's a good way to do it, because often it is a skill to be able to set goals. right? To be able to, like what you're saying, it takes time to do it. Often when we first start setting goals, like you said, you set too many. Yes. I set way too many at the start. And then it's sort of a process in learning like what's achievable, what's not, and then knowing time as well. So how long things normally take. But the more you do it, the better you get at it, right? And if you've got something practical, like if you're doing it in work, setting goals, and then if you're also doing it outside of work in your fitness or whatever it may be, it's just going to all help. Like every little bit of goal setting helps collectively all together. But I think the key there is like, blocking, like time blocking, activity blocking, like you said, the deadlines, but it's like a mental mode, right? So when you put a time limit or a deadline in mentally, and so it helps you have accountability with yourself and the discipline to learn for yourself, which is all about, again, making habits. But often that's what we struggle with is accountability. Having accountability with yourself is one of the hardest things, because if you don't do something, so if you don't do something for that marathon run, yes, it's like, 12 months away and the deadline's there, but today in the moment, if you don't do it, no one's going to know except you. So it's developing that habit. And that's the same with business. It's also the same with clinical work. If you don't write a progress note, no one's going to know but you. But, hopefully then down the track, if you're in a meeting or something, your clinical skills might start to fall through the gap or something like that. Like it's developing the accountability to yourself, which is so important. In this time management, you don't have accountability to yourself, you're going to be constantly feeling like you are running out of time.
So what do you say to your team for shaping non-client facing time?
Well, all the things we've talked about so far, but some other things that help are having an accountability partner.
Yeah.
So, telling someone I am going to do this. And then if they ask you, you need to know that you're going to do that. So it's holding each other accountable. And sometimes as well, people respond differently. So there's the analogy of the carrot and the stick, right? So in business terms, I also learned this. So sometimes we need a carrot, like it's when to be, it's a horse reward. Or a donkey, isn't it? And so like you can hold the carrot in front of the horse or the donkey, and then that's their motivation. So something really positive, there's a reward at the end of the task, and that's what's your motivation. Other people, they need the stick, which I don't know if this is a very PC example these days, but the stick on the horse, I don't know, driving the horse forward. So it's the horse is not motivated by the carrot. The horse is motivated by the stick or the pain. So sometimes people are motivated by someone pushing them to achieve something, or by, the pain of, I don't want to go back to that moment. That was so painful. I want to overcome that. So what it's, finding out what works for you. And I feel like, when I first heard this, I was like, oh, I'm definitely a stick person.
Are you?
Yeah, I'm not really a carrot person. And I had to learn to be a carrot person, like to celebrate my wins and celebrate my achievements. That wasn't something that I was brought up doing very much. So I've had to learn that, but I think what I've learned through this process is it changes per situation. Yes. Sometimes I'm a carrot and sometimes I'm a stick. So
yeah, I was going to say, I don't know what I am.
Maybe a carrot.
Yeah, I would say carrot, but I think
then you're also a stick as well.
Yeah.
Because so with a stick, you don't really need a carrot there. Like you'll just work hard because you know that that's the right thing to do and you'll do it. And you don't need this big shiny object there as a reward. Like that's a good way to sort of put it. And I feel like generally, if you've come through the hard yards in business, you're probably more a stick at the start because there are no carrots in business at the start.
Yeah.
It's a lot of hard work. So essentially though, it is good to reward yourself. But it's important to figure out where you sit in that and going, okay, what do I need to help me achieve this? So it might be like, okay, when I finish this report, then I get to have a 5-minute break and go and get a coffee and a really nice treat next door. And if I don't do it, I don't get that. So that's motivating for me because I want to do that. So that's a good strategy as well, I find. Like, what's your motivation in the moment? If you're really overwhelmed, I say just write it all down, like you were saying, Lizzie, but then writing it all down and then allocating it and organizing it into something that's like not urgent. When we put it on paper, it just gives us perspective, and it also allows us to like, again, relieve us of that mental load that we're carrying, and to feel like it's in a safe space and we're not going to forget it, because that's often what's happening when we're carrying it in our minds, is we think we're going to forget it. We're going to forget it. Keep remembering, just get it on paper or write it in the notes section of your phone, or do an audio in your phone, like the voice memos. The amount of voice memos I have from driving in my car where I'm like, oh, this. So that's another really good strategy. The other good strategy I have is, if you're watching on the video, you can see I'm holding up a little cube here, which has got numbers on it. But for those on the potty, so this is called a move the needle box, which you can buy from Amazon, and it has times around the side. So it's got 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes. And basically what you do is, say your task is 60 minutes, then you'll put 60 minutes facing up on your table. And then when the 60 minutes is up, like it's battery operated. So when the 60 minutes is up, it will then beep or flash or alert you that the time it's been on 60 minutes. And you can set it, I think, to even like alert you 15 minutes before the 60 minutes is up and like give you warnings.
Oh.
And so this is like a time blocking square. It's called a move the needle square. You can buy it off Amazon. And this can also help you, if you're time blocking, free up that mental load so you don't have to check the time for yourself. And that's something really practical that you can have. I feel like with this square, sometimes this could be stressful for people as well. So it really depends on you, depends on how you respond. If you're a carrot person, this may not work. If you're a stick person, this will work because you want to beat the time.
Yeah, I like that. So maybe I'm a stick person.
Yeah.
I quite like that. And I like giving myself a deadline. I turn my phone on silent. I'm like,
take away distractions.
Yeah. Yes. Take away all the distractions, and I just go hard. And then I have to force myself. I actually probably go 90 minutes though. So I go 90 minutes and then I'll have a break, like a 15-minute break. And I try and do a few of those, like two in the morning, and then meetings in the afternoon or something, because that's when I'll get my most work done. But if I don't do that, what I tend to do is I just keep going until I'm like, my brain is not working. And I'm like, oh my gosh, why can't I function? Why can't I remember anything? It's because I've just kept going and going and going. So I think the other benefit, the silver lining of doing that, is that you can give yourself a break as well. And I think that's really important, to give yourself like a break, go and sit in the sun, get some sun in your eyeballs, and have a bit of a breather.
10, 15 minutes or even 5 minutes. We're not talking about like, hours.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely changed up a little bit. You'll feel mentally refreshed. Yeah. So that might just be, walking outside, walking to get a coffee, walking just to your lunchroom in your clinic and making a cup of tea. Yeah. That's totally fine. But you have to put the time in there for that, and know how you function. I think the other thing is in your workplace, in looking for a workplace that supports healthy development of time blocking and having people who are really good with time to mentor you through that. So, at Speak About, like we've spoken about, we do 90-day plans. We also have like speechy projects, admin projects. We have lots of other things that we do to help us structure our time, and set goals. That's what it's about, setting goals so you know where you're going and having direction, so that you can look back and be like, I am different, or I've achieved to the last 90 days. I'm not the same person, or I'm not the same clinician. And that's
really important
that we all want, right? Yeah. To be making progress in things that are important to us.
You know what, a really good step, you might already do it, is but share then within the team like what you've actually achieved. So you actually have to verbalize it, and then everyone can sit there and go, oh, that's awesome. I'm gonna do that with my team.
And that's what you need to have in a workplace. You need to have time set aside to do that. So we will do one-on-ones, like all of our speeches do one-on-ones with their mentor and go through the 90-day plan, and then we'll come together collectively as a team. And we won't go through everything because there's not enough time, and it's very important that everyone gets equal time to share. But we just might choose like 2 or 3 things that we want to highlight as a team together. And sometimes the speeches will choose like what they want to say. But it's also then really inspiring to each other, and it's uplifting to everyone else in your team. You can celebrate with them, they can celebrate with you, and you have that joint momentum together. It's so much better when you're doing it together than alone. Yeah. That's why you're in teams.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So you can all like encourage each other along. We've just started doing glimmers. So we just go, what was your glimmer over the last week? And just going back to that value of progress over perfection. And so we share that. So we've aligned it to our values, which is nice.
That's lovely. Yeah. And that's what you should be looking for, is why is this important? Like being very purpose driven. Also, it's great that we have, we use our time intentionally, but why? Because we want to get we want to get the most out of life. So we have enough and we don't feel like we're running around like headless chickens. We want to make sure that that it's all value driven and value aligned.
Yeah. And just remembering that when you are intentional with your time and you're productive with your time, you don't tend to have to work as long. So the aim of the game for us is that the team aren't doing overtime, because
no one in my team does that.
Yeah, it's not good. We don't want anyone doing overtime.
No, it's not necessary. You should be given enough time every day to complete what you need to do. If you're not, then it's looking at why you're not. Where have you got to learn? Where you've got to grow? It's not always the external structures. It's looking at yourself first and then working with your workplace.
Yeah.
And so like often, like you and I have both had to learn this, right? So what resources have helped us learn? We've spoken about Clockify, I think, before in our previous episode.
That's that Mike Michalowicz book. Yeah. I did that this year. It's awesome. I actually got some of my team to read it and they loved it, which was really cool, like even new grads, because really the whole kind of premise is systems, but what it gets you to identify. So one of the first things is that as for a business, the business's job, the business's role is to employ people. Like that's our job. So that was a big takeaway for us. Just that, that little like one piece of clarity. And so that's kind of important from a perspective of systems and delegation, because it's like we don't have to do it all ourselves, because our job is actually to give the work to other people. So don't feel guilty about giving the work to the other people in your team, because that's our job as a business, is to provide people with employment. So that was one thing. But then it's identifying our values, identifying our customers that we really like working with and that fulfill us, and then identifying our queen bee role. So what is the most important thing in our business that we like? And not everyone in the business might do it directly, but what is the most important thing? And ours is engagement, because if we don't engage the parents, if we don't engage the kids, we can't actually share our magic with them. So that's our queen bee role, is to engage everyone where we can. And so that just then drives basically how we do things. But the whole book is really about how we develop systems and the important systems to put in place so that we're utilizing our time efficiently.
Yeah, and that's essentially what we're talking about today, systems. And systems are something that you repeat over and over again the same way, so you can create something to make it easier for yourself next time you do it.
Yeah.
So that would Clockify would be if you're a business owner, right?
Yeah. I mean, my team loved it, but the whole thing is
for if you're a contractor. Yeah. The other good books that we've read are the One Thing book. So this is where it talks about the hours. When you mentioned before, when you get interrupted, how much time it takes for your brain to go back to switch into the task mode. That was the book that we got that from. So the one thing. And that book also talks about like, your notifications. And on my phone and on my laptop, I found that I was like a slave to my notifications. So I've turned them off. So when I get an email, I don't get a sound, I don't get a picture, I just get a little inbox thing at the bottom of my screen.
I don't even get that.
Yeah. So it's up to you how far you want to go. But honestly, the reason I didn't do it is because I'd forget to check my emails. But so I don't have any notifications on my phone except that are audible, except calls and text messages. And then I do all of my work things on like different apps, and we have Trello, we have Voxer, we have Teams. And so those apps are silent. And then I just get a notification in my window. But the point is that I then choose when I will check those. And I know then if something's urgent or there's a discussion that's happening, I still know that that's how I'm choosing to spend my time, and I'm not a slave to those notifications. And also it means that if we're having that quality time, like we were saying at the beginning of the day, where we have, 90 minutes or 2 hours where we'll just sit and focus, that is an uninterrupted time, but we can choose to have it uninterrupted, because a lot of people will say, well, I try to have it uninterrupted, but I get a text message or a phone call. It's like, we have to choose. So turn your phone face down, put silent on, let the people know in your team. Like, I often will shut my door and I'll say, like, I'm just working. If I have my door open, then everyone knows that I'm available. So I only do it at certain times of the day, and I don't do it for very often. But it's just having that communication to know that, like, my brain is on track and I'm going to get gold out of my brain when I stay focused. So that's what the one thing book talks about. It talks about not multitasking, which is probably what we're really not really good at in society these days with with phones and technology.
And I think it's just really important, that deep work time. If you're working on a bigger goal, like, I think that that's really necessary. And I think prioritizing that in your day where you're most productive is also really important. And it's just for me, it's as important as a client. So there's, I show up to that, and it is, nothing else can interrupt that. I don't take calls. I don't take emails. That's in another part of my day. And I do not, and that I would put that, like, really committing to that, to one of the biggest contributors to me being able to run a couple of businesses and do a podcast and, all of the things, like, and progressing over the years. It's really coming down to committing to that deep work and blocking that time to do that deep work and scheduling it out and just doing it.
Yeah, getting it done.
Step at a time. That's how I wrote my courses. And I wrote the courses when I was, and both of us created new businesses when we were on maternity leave, because we had to be really intentional with our time. So it just goes to show, doesn't it? Another book I read actually when I was on maternity leave with Flynn was Get Remarkably Organized by Lorraine Murphy. Still one of my favorite
Me too.
books.
Such a good book.
Such a great book. I think both of us read that in a couple of days, didn't we?
Oh, it was very, very easy read. Very easy. If you're not a reader, you can read this one or listen to it on an audio book. Very simple, easygoing, practical, like some dot points and things like that.
Yeah, and references to a lot of other good books and techniques and whatnot. That was really good. And one thing I got out of that was the Miracle Morning, which I've done ever since then. So Flinny is now 7. So I've been doing that for 7 years for the most part, is just getting up early and doing my Miracle Morning. And I read that book as well, which was also amazing.
Yes, that is a good book.
It's just about, taking control over your morning or your time. Yeah,
your time. And the other book we love, but it's more of a business book, is Eat That Frog. That's a good one for time. But again, like you said, it's just taking control of your time, knowing what you can and can't achieve, being realistic. And I guess that comes back to the values of integrity. So saying yes to what you can do, saying no to what you can't, organizing yourself, being accountable, and creating the life professionally and personally that you want by using your time the way that you want. And the last thing I want to say is, with your time, you don't always have to be on. So, we've been talking a lot about how to be productive in non face-to-face time. So at work, you have to be productive, right? To get your things done and to go home on time. But if we're just talking about personally, I do have time where I just switch off, and this is like it's intentionally scheduled there because I know that I need it. So whether it's reading or watching Bridgerton on Netflix or something like that. But again, when I'm not just then spending hours in front of the TV and being mindless and being and then just staying up all night and then going to bed and feeling really tired. It's intentionally going, okay, I'm going to have some downtime, but I'm doing that because I know that this is good for me. So we don't have to always be on. We can intentionally use our time to relax, to spend time with our loved ones. But we should have time for that because we've time blocked at work and we feel like we can leave work at work. And that's what makes it successful for us as professionals and successful on our journey.
Yeah. And you need to take that time because you need to layer in reward. Because if it was all just go, 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 like that's just your recipe to burning out. And
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So we hope you have really got a lot of practical tips out of this episode, loads of resources that we've given you. Start with one thing at a time and then go from there. And if you have any questions, you can always send us a DM on Instagram. Make sure you give us a review. We'd love to hear what you think or what you learned from this episode. And we will talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.